All right, we're just going to get started. I'm Scott. He's a former NFL player, could have been a former Major League Baseball player. He's that good. You know, he's also the current president of the NFL Player Association, the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, and host of the online TV show, The Extra Point, and of course, host of the Extra Point podcast, along with me.
And he's good friend of.
And a good friend of mine.
That's right.
He's Larry Mallory. All right, Larry, we taped our podcast last week. Verify that. We did do it.
Yes, we did.
You know, and it was so good.
It was probably the best one we ever had.
It was by far the best one. And I mean, I loved it. You know, we had the arguments going about the Jaguars giving up 42 points to Pittsburgh, and you're telling me it's about the W, and you know, and I kept saying, where's this defense and all of that. And shortly after we taped, we started hearing oh no's from Cindy and Adam as they were breaking down. And we looked at each other and said, let's go to lunch.
And I think when we figured out what was happening in the long run, we started to cry because it was so good. I mean, we really covered so many good subjects last week.
And it's a shame everybody missed our greatness.
That's right.
You know, but unfortunately, we couldn't get our schedules to work to redo it.
That's true.
You know, but we had that slight opportunity, but we were worn out and said, let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
You know, we had to do that. But there was a technical glitch. And but it was interesting because, you know, to me, it's so far in the past now, because I remember we talked about the Falcons blowing the Super Bowl and then blowing the game against Philadelphia. They had the opportunity on the final drive on the 5-yard line, 2-yard line or whatever in a 15-10 game, and they couldn't punch the ball in. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, these guys are just beside themselves 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
But now that the next games went, those games are so far in the past now. Everybody forget they're over.
Is this kind of like the new wave we have in America? Because on the news cycle is just churning so fast now. You forget what happened the day before.
And that's what's going on the sports side now.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
I still remember, you know, I think we had talked about, you know, I had to take my little 93-year-old mom to Sundays. My wife and I, we have to take her to a movie. And so we went to see The Post. And so I had missed most of the Minnesota Saints game. But the movie ended and there were 3 minutes left, and I'm standing in the lobby with 300 other people watching the end of that game, and there was like 19 scores in the final 3 minutes.
That's right.
Ending with what they were calling the Minnesota Miracle.
Yeah.
You know, on that bomb to Diggs, he caught the ball and stayed in bounds, and
the defensive back drops his head, and he'd already had all these previous accolades on how good he was as a rookie. Right. And then he makes that rookie mistake. He'll remember that for the rest of his life.
But we were talking about now, there's Case Keenum, the quarterback, and then there's Teddy Bridgewater, who was the quarterback until he got hurt, and then there was Sam Bradford, who also was the quarterback till he got hurt. And we were talking about how, you know, which one, they're all going to be free agents, which one of the three is Minnesota going to keep? And we both agreed that it's got to be Case.
Yeah.
Because this is his team, and look what he did with them. And then they had that horrible game against Philadelphia that we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, now the discussion is, who are they going to keep? That game, did that change everything on Case Keenum, that game?
I don't think it did. I think that, you know, it's a long journey to get to that particular game, and Case actually managed and guided them through that journey. None of the three quarterbacks have been signed. So at the end of the day, the team that was possibly going to the Super Bowl in 2017, 2018, now might not even have any of the three quarterbacks with them next year. So it's amazing that this offseason for Minnesota will be a big negotiating offseason for them. But I think they have the core of a strong team. If you notice, you know, Case has moved around a lot. His wife is a great manager of moving them from city to city. So if he has to go, he's comfortable with it. But the other two guys, I don't know if they've moved around as much as Case has.
Well, you know, I remember we talked about how Coach Zimmer said what you always say in that miracle game. You know, the Vikings, he was congratulating the team. You guys played all 60 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and then, of course, in that previous week, you know, the Patriots were really the only team that did exactly what they were supposed to do. They just dominated, you know, the Titans, who am I leaving out from that week? You know, we talked about Minnesota. We talked about the Falcons, Jacksonville. Okay, so we covered them all.
Yeah, we got
we did cover them all, and then, but we were talking about how great a week of football that was.
Right.
I mean, it was so exciting, all those games, and now it's like the news cycle. You don't remember them. You don't think of them. It's like, I complained to a buddy of mine in California, when the Bears blew a game to Atlanta, where Howard dropped the ball that would have been the game-winning touchdown. Josh Howard, the great running back, at the end of the game. And he emailed me back, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, somebody in Cleveland dropped the football in 1963." It was like he was mocking me.
Right.
That happens in every game, and, and as a fan, we cling to those things going, "Oh, if only, if only." But those games, those 4 games that were so wonderful are completely wiped out from our memories now because of the 2 we had last week.
And just to continue on that thought pattern, I even think that the other day when they played the AFC played the first game with the New England Patriots and their opponent, and the NFC the second game, it's the same on that day because everybody was looking at that New England game, right? And honestly, everybody a lot of people wanted New England to not get there again.
Right.
Then after the Philadelphia game started so aggressively, people just started moving away from the television because Philadelphia was locked. Some people were disappointed because they didn't want to see the Patriots. In fact, I think they look at the game.
You're so kind.
They look at that game to see. Let's hope the Patriots lose. Okay, they won again.
Now you're. Well, what's really interesting about that game. You never felt like when teams are down 20-10 in a playoff game. Mm-hmm. And, we talk about it a lot, defense, and you're talking about who they're playing. There was still never that comfort that New England wasn't going to come back and win this game.
That's true.
I mean, you're going 20-10 the whole fourth quarter, they're going to come back and win. And then they scored that touchdown to make it 20-17 with like 8.5 minutes to play or something. You're going, well, if they get a stop, they're getting the ball again.
That's right. One of the announcers, I think, put it very well. He said, when New England gets to the playoffs, they believe they're going to win, and the opponent believes they're going to win. I thought that was a poignant statement, a great.
So the opponent believes New England's going to win.
Exactly. Well, think about it.
Yeah.
They've been watching New England perform for 60 minutes and come through at the last minute time after time after time.
Yeah.
And to be quite frank now, my analysis of that game, though, when you've won as much as Belichick has won, I do believe that the referees have a sensitivity to your team because I do believe that.
Careful.
I know. Careful. But I think that some of those calls on the defensive backs, Saxonville's defensive backs, kind of lean toward the Patriots.
Now, I agree with you, but here's my question to that. Uh-huh. Are they thinking that during the game?
The referees?
Yeah.
No, they're not thinking it during the game. In fact, I believe that their minds have to be blank during the game. They can't put anything in there.
Which I believe
prior to the game.
I believe that they are during the game. They're watching the game.
They have to react.
They're reffing the game.
Well, they have to react to the situation. Right. And the key to some referees is your area. They don't look at the whole game.
Right.
The lineman is only looking at linemen. The back judge is only looking at backs.
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
Right.
So the referees in general have to go into the game with a clear mind because it's moving so fast, they have to react so fast, and they're responsible for only a certain part. And if that part is not captured properly, now they have a camera over them to say you were wrong.
Well,
so that's a challenge for them.
Yeah, it is. Now let
challenge.
me ask you, when you were playing, how much talking to the refs did you do?
None at all. No talking to the referees at all.
None of the players?
No, me personally.
Yeah.
Because I came out of a historical black college where the coach was very similar to Belichick.
Right.
There was no emotion on the sideline.
Right.
You focused on what you were supposed to do. If you did something wrong, I've shared this with you, you do 5, 10, and 10.
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, that rolling on your sides on a football field.
So you're talking about discipline. We walked into that stadium disciplined. We were disciplined by our coaches during the game, and we walked out of there disciplined. If anybody got off of that process, they were reprimanded severely. And you see that same personality in the New England Patriots.
All right, so let me ask you this then. What do other players say to the refs? I mean, are they bitching at him during the game? Are they?
You're seeing, I believe, and this is personal.
He's holding me all game, ref. Come on.
Well, I believe that this is a process of generations, and you and I are from the same generation.
Right.
You probably didn't talk at the referees the way that these young kids are talking at the referees. We were taught a little different.
Right.
Our respect, was a bit different.
Right.
But nowadays, the money is there. The minimum salaries are high.
Yeah.
If you don't, the millennials say, if you don't become the leader, I'll take it over and just pay me. So, that's the difference.
Well, see, and that's the thing, too. It's like, you talk about even the coaches. How are you telling a guy $50 million who's making $50 million a year? How can you tell him what he should be doing?
Very easily cut him.
Yeah.
They have the power now. The coaches still have the power.
But they're not going to cut anybody who's making that kind of money.
Well, the $50 million man, though, has a much more scrutiny than the $20 million man.
Yeah.
And the $50 million man is usually a quarterback.
And what I like about that is, the poor $20 million man.
That's right. He is in such a low category.
Hey, I'm sorry, that cracked me up. I know, pre-93.
Pre-93, we were the $30,000 man.
Yeah. I know. Now, let me ask you, does that bother you guys? Because you really laid the foundation for the guys to start getting that money. Mm-hmm. And explain to people that 93 is kind of when the money started to kick in.
Right. That's
because you always talk about pre-93 and after 93.
That's right. That was a collective bargaining agreement year that converted from the old processes to the new processes.
Right. But how did that make you guys feel? I mean, does it bother you?
Scott, that's a great question. And it's a great question for me and my chapter here, because we just had one of our players that we just had to put in it was very cold recently, and we just had to find a place for him to stay. He was sleeping in his car. So it's according to what player you're speaking with. I think every player has an issue with doing the same thing that someone else is doing and did, and making 90% less for the same activity. So there's always going to be something there. All in all, though, many professional athletes that were stars in the old days, they didn't make the money the guys making, but they were able to leverage their lives a little differently, than guys that were not big stars. And so I think that it's according to who you speak to. I don't think that many players will publicly denounce what's going on because of the brotherhood, the overall brotherhood. But if you played a game and had to go through something where you had to hit 60, 70, 80 times a year and make 30,000, where now someone hits 14 only times a year and makes a minimum of $500,000, there is some emotion, if not only from your wife and your children.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's some emotion.
Yeah. Well, my kids, when they were young, would say, "Dad, if you would have gone out and played, we'd be in a mansion."
That's right.
And I'm thinking pre-93.
That's right.
We wouldn't be in anything.
But you did pretty good in the long run.
Well, so let me ask you now. There was something else. That I wanted to mention to you. A couple of years ago, and I forget who it was, but one of the former great Boston Celtics.
Okay.
They were auctioning off all of his memorabilia because he needed the money. And I can't remember, I'm so bad with names now. I see his face, but I can't remember his name. But the big thing I was hearing on the radio was how, they set the stage, those guys in the 50s, with the great Russell teams, that for the Kevin Garnetts, to make their $50 million a year and everything. And they were sort of putting the onus on Kevin Garnett to buy up all the memorabilia and then maybe give it back to him.
I see.
And everything. So I can't see how you blame the players of today for what happened in the past. Now, they may be the beneficiaries of all of this groundwork, but it's kind of like that in life for everything. Because like when you think of the generations, I think of my grandparents coming here, the typical story that we hear so often, without a dime in their pocket, poor in Europe, came here with the American dream. They all got married, raised their families. They didn't necessarily get rich. They lived a life. And then my parents had a little bit better, except they had to live through the Great Depression as children, which they suffered. And, my dad had to go into World War II. And, our generation had a little bit better, and now our kids have it really pretty good. You know what I mean? But I guess, I don't expect my kids to sit there and go, oh, they're great grandparents. I don't know how much they think about that today. So it's kind of like that in sports too. How much blame could the guys today get for what might have happened to the older players?
Well, I've never seen any older player put any blame on a younger player.
Okay. Well, this wasn't the players doing it. I was just talking about this one story with the Boston Celtics where the radio guys were suggesting that maybe this is Kevin Garnett should take care of this. And I'm sitting there going, but why?
Right. Well, now I can't speak on the media side. You would have to probably take a much stronger position on that side. But from a player's side, I don't see many players blaming anybody for anything. I think that if there is some blame to be put out, it would probably be on your parents. You just happen to be born at this time in your life. But I think that there's a brotherhood that's been established no matter when you played. Imagine this. I'm 65, and right now I have guys in my chapter that are in their 70s and 80s. They made less than I made. They actually had to ride the bus to the games or the train to the games in the big cities, with their fans. Yeah. So I think professional athletes have scabbed up for the improvement in the sport and the generational opportunities that it's provided.
But that's in life in general, though.
Well, but we're only talking about sports right now. And in life in general, I mean, in both sports and in life in general, according to where you are at that time, is according to how you view it. Because in America, everybody should be happy, and there's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But just as I shared with you, I just had a player that was out in the freezing cold, sleeping, not knowing where to go. And when we try to get him into a place, his statements is going to be how much he hates the NFL. So it's according to where you are. It's according to your brain position. We had a lot of head trauma in NFL, and a lot of guys that are in bad shape are in bad shape based upon some of the things that possibly have come from their time in professional football. So it's I think it's an individual basis, but overall it's a pretty good brotherhood.
Well, let's jump off track here just for a second then, and I just want to mention the CTE. We talked about it in the podcast that didn't air, but you're going to receive an award from women activists in CTE.
Yes, sir.
These are mothers who lost their children.
Correct.
Because you are a former NFL player that is promoting the flag football until 14. So I just wanted to mention that, that you will be honored for that. And is that a movement that you think is going to catch on?
Well, yes, because I sort of watched the movement evolve, and so this is not the early stages of it. It's actually kind of the middle developmental stages of it. Did it go off?
No, I'm looking.
Oh, okay.
It didn't. Well, I was squinting because I didn't have my glasses on.
Oh, that's right. Well, these so it's in the developmental stages, and now the organization has had the opportunity of speaking with the U.S. Senate and identifying January 30th as National CTE Day. And so I believe that, I wouldn't have my young baby child before 14 hitting his head on a wall every day. Or doing something to shake his... I wouldn't have him doing that. And so I sort of understand, or feel that I understand, the fact that youth sports should not be cerebrally aggressive early. At least give the young people a chance for their brains to develop to some degree of stability, and then move into some degree of football.
And my guess would be, if they are more developed, they're probably better able to recover from injury.
I would think so. And in fact, that's a great way of putting it, because basically what we're doing is preparing better professional athletes.
Right.
I think from early to 14 is an area where we can work on health. We can fight children's obesity.
Right.
We can talk about learning processes and how we can get healthy and work on the physical part of our bodies, but without having to go through any cerebral challenges.
And it's not only football, it's kind of all sports.
That's true.
So is there a movement, do you think, that will try to redefine sports?
I think that and that's the movement that I've aligned to, because I think the only thing that can redefine sports are our mothers.
Right.
And I support these mothers. My heart has gone out to the mothers that have lost their children early in youth sport. And anything that we can do, I can do as a person to increase the safety in youth sports, I'm there for them.
Yeah.
Also, though, anything that I can do, I'm watching these kids. Scott, we do a lot of football camps, and a lot of these little football camp coaches are saying that the strongest thing that they're seeing on children nowadays are their thumbs. Because all they're doing is working the phone.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to, when you and I grew up, our mothers would say, go to the playground.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we knew to come in when the lights would come on.
Yeah, or we heard a whistle from somebody's father.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't get that type of physical exercise in the kids' lives anymore.
Right.
And with our diets and with the fact that in inner city neighborhoods, there's not a lot of healthy food.
Right.
You know what I mean? So between healthy food, bringing children into a better health condition, those are the things I think that youth football can do before we start to understand if you got to tackle somebody or not.
Is there ever going to be a movement to abolish football?
I don't think so. I think that it's too strong of a U.S. entity. I think that football, after a certain period of time, is a very strong commercial and capitalistic opportunity for a specific group of people, for any group of people, based on the new salaries we have.
Right.
So I don't think it'll ever go away.
Yeah.
I think that we can help to deliver better athletes to be considered professionals.
Yeah.
And the way that we do that is to preserve their brains.
Let me ask you this now, too. When you talk about the salaries, I don't have any idea, so that's why I'm asking. Mm-hmm. What do the front office guys make? I mean, what is the general manager of a football team? Is he making more than the players? I mean, he's the boss.
That's right. He's the boss. Gruden just signed a
$100 million, but it's only $10 million a year.
That's true. It's only $10 million a year.
And he's got to go all 10 years.
Oh, he's in such a rough situation. Sure.
I know, but what is that, Brady? Is that a month and a half for Brady?
That's right. That's true.
I'm
not sure about the front office salaries.
I was just curious because you always, in most organizational charts, the boss makes this, the VP makes this, the assistant makes this, and
it works his way down.
It works his way down.
That's right.
Here it seems like the players make so much money, and there's so many of them. What is the front office guys getting?
Okay, now I do have some input on that, because the players are nowhere near the top of the revenue.
Right.
The owners are the first. Yeah, right. Obviously, right.
And they're making, I'm sure, bukus of money. They'll never tell us that, but
$10 million a day. Some small amount.
Yeah, like I'm sure they're making a lot of money.
Yeah,
the owners. But then, what about the general manager or the president, the vice president of operations, or all these titles?
I think
they're making a living. I'm sure
they're making a great living.
Right.
But I would go out on a limb, Scott, to say that
the players are more.
No, but see, based upon the fact that I'm only hitting 14 times, they've taken out a lot of the physical activity.
Right.
Players basically come.
Now, I know what you're talking about, but you better explain what is that 14 times hitting.
Oh, okay. 14 times hitting means that when you sign an NFL contract, unlike the past where you would hit twice a day.
Right. In practice,
right. Throughout the entire season.
Right.
And if the coach got mad at you, it might be a little more.
Right.
Now you are only allowed to put on shoulder pads 14 times outside of the 16 games that you play.
Right.
You are only allowed to put on shoulder pads 14 times and hit each other physically.
Right.
14 times.
Right.
Pop Warner football players are hitting more than 14 times.
Well, sure.
So that supports my position on the children.
Right.
And they're not getting paid.
Right.
So that's the issue. The issue now is that the contractual relationship that they have with the players, and there is an effort to draw attention to reduced head trauma, reduced pounding of the brain. Now there's a designated 14 times a year that you hit.
Right.
So I hit 14 times in 1 week.
Right. Yeah.
And my wife still calls me crazy.
So do you have a fear that something's one day is going to be wrong?
Well, not only a fear, you actually live it. You and I live it. Sometimes we got to put our glasses on. Sometimes we can't remember.
Right.
What happens in the past, though, Scott, was that the brain was not focused on as much as it's being focused on now. When we were growing up, people didn't talk about,
concussions,
all of this, concussions and stuff.
Got your bell rung.
They saw that this as a jumping the broom to be a man type of sport. You know what I mean? Nowadays, the information is why we're having these conversations.
Right.
The deafs, the guys that have passed on before us, those are the guys that's allowing us to have these conversations.
You had once said to me in passing, talking about that 93, pre-93 and after 93, you said to me, and maybe I'm wrong on the number, that's why I want to ask, but you had said that there's only 600 of you guys left that played football in the NFL pre-93. Is that the accurate number?
Well, there was a 2,800 number at one time, and these were guys that had played 3 years, which is the new vestation period. Right. It's many more guys out there, but guys before 93 that should be vested that are not.
I got you.
Those are the guys that started at 2,800 and then they went to around 17, and now we're down to about 800.
Right.
So the guys are dying off.
Right.
And especially those that played in the 50s, 60s, and now they're at my year because I'm the 70s.
That's a frightening thought.
Well, it's a conscious thought. We didn't have this type of consciousness when you and I were coming up.
No.
You know what I mean? And now we have to, this is another part of the equation. So now when you're upstairs in your house and you start downstairs and then you forget, what am I going down there for? Now it becomes more relevant to you.
Right.
than in the old days when your parents might say, okay, I'll remember when I get down there.
Yeah. So everybody watching or listening to this podcast, you could watch it on the generationsbroadcastcenter.com. You can listen to it on iTunes, and you can watch it on the Generations YouTube channel. Just thought I'd throw a little plug in.
That's pretty good. You've had your hydration today. You're overly hydrated.
That's right. See, these are the things we worry about. But what I was going to say is that anybody that's like 40 and younger are sitting there and going, what are these two guys?
What are they talking about?
These two old guys, what are they? But anybody a little bit older, they get it.
But our message to them is that we love you, young guys, because we're actually telling you what your future might look like if you do what we did.
Yeah, in Rocky 900, there was a line where he looked at the boxer, because he called him a crazy old man, and he looked at him and said, "You'll get there."
That's right.
So and I'm always telling that to Adam. When he says something to me, I go, "You'll get there."
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it'll come up quicker than you think.
That's true.
All right. Well, let's. I know we got some time. There's a very important football game this weekend that we probably won't discuss at all. The All-Star game.
Yeah. We don't want to talk about that.
But the Super Bowl coming up. The games last week. Did that surprise you, Philadelphia? Just controlling Minnesota. It seemed like when they hit Case's arm, going in for a second score, and they would have opened up a pretty big lead.
Yeah.
And it seemed to change the whole game, and Minnesota never got back on track.
Usually Minnesota jumps out ahead of you quickly.
Right.
Gets out, gets a score on the board.
And they did already.
They did. Yeah. They did. But I just, you're at home. A guy, I was looking at the game, and one guy made, I think, a very brilliant statement. He said that NFL playoffs should be on neutral sites. What do you think about that?
Well, all the bowl games in college are.
That's right. And I think that, honestly, that played a part in the Philadelphia.
But isn't
Minnesota
that why
game.
you bust your butt all year to get home field advantage too?
It is. I'm just presenting an option, but it does, it does give a leverage to whoever, whatever team has the better team now.
But does that lead to a team to go, you know what, we're a little beat up this week, winning this game, we're still going to be in the playoffs, we're not playing for home field advantage now, we could kind of slack off. Mm-hmm. Would that happen?
Well, I mean, I don't think that when you get to that point and the extra checks, each time you win a game, you get another check plus your game check.
I'm talking about the regular season, though.
Oh, okay.
If your position is locked in, and if you win one more game here and you get home field advantage, and if you lose, you don't. But if there is no home field advantage, you go, let's rest a couple of linemen that are beat up a little bit in this game.
Yes, I think that would be a relevant thing to do. They did that here.
Right.
They rested some guys, and I think that's a smart way to go.
I do like the idea of the neutral, but for the playoffs. But then I think it will change somewhat of the regular season. It
will, but interestingly enough, the Minnesota business community was very, very. They weren't really so happy about Minnesota coming to the Super Bowl.
No, because people would go to the game and then go home.
Exactly.
Now they're coming into town. They're going to be making some money.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
so, it's just according to who you're talking to as to who's happy.
Yeah, the local pizza joint across the street from the stadium is thrilled.
They're thrilled. That's right.
Yeah, but they won't say it. But that's true. I mean, I can't imagine the Bucks brought into a city. A couple of years ago when it was here in Dallas, they were just talking about how, Jones, he's really going to rake in the money, and then we had an ice storm.
That's right.
They were barely able to play the game.
That's right.
And
then a year later he buys Papa John's pizza. So maybe that pizza guy, you're right on that pizza analogy.
So Jones owns part of Papa John's now?
Yeah, he does. You see how the commercials roll. He owns part of Papa John's now.
Oh, yeah. Papa's retiring. He kind of backed away. In my understanding, it's because of all the football standing, not standing. He took a stance against the players or something. And
the Papa John pizza guy?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, really?
Maybe he was for them. I don't know if he was for them or against them. But anyway, he's stepping down as CEO of Papa John's, and I don't really know why. But they were trying to tie it somehow to the NFL.
Right.
Well, I mean,
I'm sure him stepping down as CEO, he won't require any public assistance.
I'm saying all of this is way above my pay grade anyway,
right.
And probably understanding of contracts and whatnot.
That's true.
So, all right, so Philadelphia really destroyed Minnesota, and the Pats had that amazing comeback. Does Jacksonville recover for next year?
I think they do. I mean, I think they have all four of those teams have a good core. And I think that the only one that I would really question would be the one that's been there the most is the Patriots. We don't know what Belichick's decision is going to be moving into next year. If he wins another Super Bowl, who knows? He might.
Well,
say
he's not going to the Giants because they just hired that coach.
That's true. Was it?
And don't ask me a name because it's
Spagnuolo. What? No, it was Shermer. It was Shermer they hired.
Yeah.
And Shermer came from Cleveland. Why would we hire someone that's coming from Cleveland? Shermer must be a cousin of somebody.
Well, Marinelli went to the Bears as a defensive coordinator and really beefed up the Bear defense, and then he went to Dallas and beefed up their defense. But as the head coach of Detroit, he was 0-16.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe they just like the guy, the philosophy of his, and you got to get certain players to fit philosophies. I would always think that you want to go after the best coach out there.
I do too, and I
wonder if they had any discussions with Belichick, because why would they rush so soon?
I would think that they would have had discussions because Belichick has a history with the Giants. Belichick worked for them before.
But I don't think he could talk about that or could talk until after his team was out of the playoffs.
Correct.
And I would have waited.
Well, I probably would have waited too.
I mean, all he could have done is say no, and then you can move on.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I do believe though that the game, this millennial input, this young coach input with the McVays and I think Gruden might have it. Gruden comes out of an era of more than 14 hits a year.
Right.
And now he can't do that anymore. So he now has to have a different technique of delivering information to a group of young men.
Yeah, Gruden, I don't know if that was the greatest move for either. He's been away from the game for a while. I know he's announcing it, and I know he knows the game inside and out. But it's a completely, like you said, it's a new generation.
Well, I got a contract here, Scott. Would you sign a contract if I gave you a contract for $100 million for 10?
I'm not saying, you know.
He can't turn the money down.
You can't turn the money down. But I'm just saying, they're expecting him to come in and start winning Super Bowls. Why else would you hire him?
Well,
and is he, like you said, is he going to be able to relate now? Because the way Gruden was back then, with that skull on his face, and all of his, they build it up for his, TV broadcast,
right.
The way he is and everything. How's that going to fly with the next wave of 20-year-old kids, 22-year-old kids?
See, I think that he has a good core. He has a Derek Carr quarterback, a young quarterback, already making enough money. So, in fact, making almost more money than anybody else. So he doesn't have to worry there. I think his defensive line.
And is Derek Carr going to, buy into Gruden's, much more discipline probably than Derek Carr has been used to?
Well, and if Derek wants to continue to make that money, the quarterback won't be the head coach. Derek will be somewhere else. That's the only leverage that you have.
You keep saying that, but I can't think of one quarterback making that big bucks that
Osweiler.
But he didn't produce on the field.
But the big bucks is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You follow? That's the big bucks. He left Houston for $70 million, went to Denver for $70. Look at all the quarterbacks that are making $50, $60 million and have never been to a playoff.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, I think that this millennial group, they have to have a coach. And I think you hit something real relevant too. The way that they structure Gruden's contract, they got it structured in a way in which if it doesn't work, then both of us are happy. I don't have to pay you and you have to leave.
Right.
That's how it is these days. And
Yeah.
with the owners now, in the old days, in our day, the owner of the Bears were the money that he was making. He might have had some other little small side businesses. Right. But nowadays, every owner has major other businesses in there.
Some have Papa John's.
That's right. Some have not only Papa John's, now they're coagulating.
Right.
The Steinbrenners and the Joneses sell beer in over 50% of the other stadiums. So their money now is moving between each other.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Is it okay that you said that you're telling on everybody?
Well, what I just shared, that's actually on the billboard as you go into Cowboy Stadium. Okay. So I love Jerry Jones.
Yeah. No, I know you do. No, I know you really do.
And my mom wants to meet him, so I got to stay good with him. So.
Oh man, well, my company used to do advertising for the Dallas Cowboys before Jerry Jones, so I could leave it. I could leave it at that.
Well, I mean, you worked a lot with Tom Landry and some of the stars with the Cowboys, and our objective now is to get you back in with the Cowboys so we can make some more movies.
I couldn't believe how kind and considerate Tom Landry was to me whenever I was there. He would sit down and talk to me. One day, I'm in his office talking to him. And I said, "Coach, you must be busy. What are you doing?" He said, "No, Scott, let's talk for a couple of minutes. I'm just working on the game plan." And I mean, I'm sitting and thinking, Tom Landry just told me to sit and visit with him for a few minutes. He's working on the game plan?
Right.
I was very concerned whether the Cowboys would win that next game or if I screwed something up.
That's a good point.
But I don't think I could walk into, I'm talking about in the 80s. I don't think I could walk into any NFL coach's office now and sit down and talk to him.
Oh, no. No, it's so much security around everybody now.
It's so different.
Yeah, it's completely different as it was then.
Oh my gosh. Well, on February 1st, we're going to premiere the second season, Thursday night, of The Extra Point, starring Larry Mallory.
Way to go.
I got to think of all those intros where I tear you down a little bit so everybody gets a laugh in the audience.
That's true.
And it's nothing personal, that?
No.
It's all for the show.
It is.
And your guests for the first show are going to be two proud dads whose sons were drafted into the NFL.
And with the NFL draft being here in Dallas this year, well, actually in Arlington, Texas, at Cowboy Stadium, I'm sure both Chris Thomas And well, I'm sure both of the fathers actually will be real happy, and they'll be a part of that draft day.
Right.
And you and I will be planning some activities around draft day as well.
Hopefully, for sure, we'll at least be doing a podcast from there.
Yeah. And both of their sons had a good year.
Yeah.
They're both happy about that.
And we're talking about Cliff Odom and his son Chris, who's on the Green Bay.
Exactly.
And Chris Thomas and his son is Solomon Thomas, who had a super year on the 49ers.
That's right.
So that's going to be at 5 o'clock Central Time on the generationsbroadcastcenter.com, on the Generations YouTube channel. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, the Generations Broadcast Center.
And please subscribe, and make sure you subscribe to your YouTube channel and to the GBC, the Generations Broadcast Center, to check out our shows. You know, your support is what makes this all free. So we really appreciate your support. Okay. We need to let everybody please run and look at that. It's going to be absolutely a fantastic year for us.
It's going to be a great season. All right, man. I'll see you next week. No glitches.
Oh, way to go. Talk to you later.
All right, man.
All
Take
the
care.
best.